Good afternoon. Whoa. We need to call this meeting to the Mojave County Advisory Code Board meeting to order, if we may. I apologize that we're trying to get this done quickly. Apparently, planning and zoning with Mojave County ran a little bit late and they're coming back. So, let me find my agenda real quick. Now I'm lost. Patty, where'd it go? I got it. The meeting is now called to order. May I ask everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. May we have roll call, please?
Absolutely. Chairman Hamilton.
Here.
Vice Chair Profit.
Here.
Board Member McKee.
Here.
Board Member Azarmi.
Here.
Board Member Renner. Board Member Renner. I do show he is via telephonic.
Do we have him online yet?
He's on the phone. Can you hear us, Dan? But he is not responding, so I'm going to mark him as absent. Board Member Walker.
Here.
You have a quorum.
I think we missed Board Member Ruge. Thank you. Okay, so we have a quorum, I believe. That is correct. We need to have a vote on the approval of the meeting minutes from April 12th, 2023. If everybody's had a chance to go over those, or if we have any questions on those, now would be the time.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
All those in favor of approving the minutes from the Mojave County Advisory Code Board meeting dated April 12th, 2023, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The meeting minutes of April 12th pass. First item on the agenda is discussion and possible action regarding amendment to code for clarification of soil reports and soil types. I believe this is going to end up being mostly a house cleaning item. Is that correct, Gilbert?
Chairman Hamilton, board members, this is a clarification and some additions to our ordinance to clarify soils reports and different data used for those. So if I can, this is a discussion and possible action regarding the geotechnical requirements for commercial and residential properties. This was continued over from our April 12th meeting. Basically, staff was asked by the board to look at alternate methods and alternate testing areas for soils reports. We actually came up with, and if you look at your section of amending section 1803 of the International Building Code to include, and I'll quote, when an upgraded geotechnical report is completed, the recommendation of the new report will be accepted in lieu of the previous report. I know that was a discussion of the board of having passed soils report in certain subdivision areas, and that a new report could replace that or could be defined better to, per se, be less lenient than the first report. So the most current report would stand, and we would honor that. That's one amendment we would like to make in the code, and that's of section 1803.2. Also, in the exception category, 1803.2 investigation required. We are proposing to add the statement of satisfactory data may include geotechnical reports on adjacent areas and septic soils investigation reports on subject properties. That was a discussion also of looking at different types of reports and being able to utilize those to identify any expansive soils or clay soils on the property that would constitute a full soils report or a density report. So staff basically make those recommendations to the code. My narrative is these will allow an updated geotechnical reports and alternate testing material methods to determine soil classifications and establish soil bearing pressure based on table 1806.2, which is the presumptive load bearing values. So in those values have the soil bearing pressure. With these additional reports, we'll be able to determine what classification the soil would be and what soil bearing pressure would be for that. So staff make those recommendations. A motion from the board to approve the amendment as presented.
Is there any discussion from the board?
Yes, please. I was kind of under the, is this too loud? Is this a little bit better like that? Okay. I was under the impression that we weren't going to do a blanket overall requirement for geocheck reports on every property that a permit was filed for. That it was going to be more of, if there was one existing in a subdivision, that we could go ahead and use that one that was existing for the subdivision, or as, Gilbert, you said, provide an updated report if it's old to offer new recommendations. And I liked the discussion that Mehdi had talked about last time about if we do have some properties that are don't fall in the category of a subdivision that has a geotech report, and we're getting a septic tank put on it, that same information is provided in that septic report, the type of soils, the depth, if there's any expansive soils and all that. And I think it would be wise for us to use that information in lieu of an additional report. And certainly if there's expansive soils and something needs to be done and a recommendation needs to be done on an engineer's level. But if we're talking about an area that has been built in for a long time, that we know, I mean, like we discussed last time, that there are several areas that we know, and we could each pinpoint them on a map of where we have problems. But if something's falling in an area that doesn't have a problem, and there's several homes that haven't had an issue, it just seems like a large expense to have to go through that we have to pass on to our homeowners. And I mentioned last time that it cost me about $100 and some odd thousand last year in over excavating and doing all this stuff. So it's a big cost to the builder, and then we pass it on to the consumer, who may, an extra $5,000-$6,000 a house may push them out of our market and put them into a mobile home or something else, which is the topic of another discussion. But so it just seems like that we can blanket ourselves too tightly with regulations and requirements on every single permit, where we price ourselves out of a market, when we're just kind of coming back into things and swing.
Chairman Hamilton, Member McKee, that's what we looked at here, to include those other tests or even a soil, a septic soils investigation report, which does classify the soils, that we would be able to see, expansive soils, and that would give us the tools basically to say you have a problem with the soils, and a soils report would be needed. So we're indicating, or we're changing the code in order to allow those additional reports, so every property wouldn't, doesn't need a soils report based on some of the data that we could get provided.
I didn't see that in here. I didn't. Maybe I missed it.
Chairman Hamilton, Mr. McKee, I think if you look at the second bold underline under the exception, so it says that the building official, if you look at the full exception, the building official shall be permitted to waive the requirement for a geotech investigation where satisfactory data from adjacent areas is available that demonstrates an investigation is not necessary for any of the conditions in sections 18.305.1 through 0.6, and then 10 through 11. And then what we're adding, so that's that was what was in the code, and what we're adding to it is satisfactory data may include geotechnical reports on adjacent areas. So if we have, a lot that's going in next to a subdivision where we've got one, a geotech report, we could say, hey, that geotech report would be similar to this one. And then it also says, and septic soil is investigative reports on the subject property. So what we would do is look at that septic, that soil investigation for that septic report, and basically what we're looking for is expansive soils. So if that septic, if that soil investigation shows that there's expansive soils, then we would say, hey, we've got an issue here, we need to look for that. If it doesn't, we need to have a geotech report, to see what to do with this. If it doesn't have that expansive soils, at that point, then it would be waived, and we could use that to say these soils are sufficient to move forward. What we tried to do was we looked at the board's minutes from the last two meetings. We watched them online and tried to capture as concise as possible the discussion that was had in trying to look at be able to, because I know one of the concerns was, a lot of times you'll get a geotech report that says over X everything 3 feet and go from there, and that's not always necessary. So we addressed that one by saying if an updated geotech report is acquired that doesn't say that, we will go with the recommendations of the updated report. And then the other one was not having to require a geotech on everything. Basically the exception covering that option to, if we have a septic soil investigation, we can use that to say, hey, there's no clays there's no expansive soil, so we can move forward with that one. But also being able to use the geotech reports for adjacent properties to be able to reach that same conclusion of not needing one. So I think we're speaking the same language, and I think what we tried to do was, and maybe we were a little too concise, but we tried to, take that conversation we've had on the last two meetings and find the right place to amend the code to make sure that it was codified.
Mr. Chairman? So basically, if you want to kind of recap this, what we are talking about is that, if it is an existing subdivision that has a geotech report, you're accepting that for the balance of the properties that are not built on. And if there is any question or concern, they can go back to the soil engineer and correct whatever, over X, like, that we are talking about, needs to be done by that. So that's one option. The other option is that, based on the land use ordinance of the Mojave County, the new ordinance for the septic tank is that it has to be minimum 1 acre. So with 1 acre, they would be able to do the perk test, and the perk test is acceptable, and that would be supplied at the same time that they are basically applying for the building permit, and that would be accepted. I know that there was some concern by Gilbert about, the matching, and I know that you addressed that in a private meeting, but is that going to be implemented? So that would be translated from one haircut.
Yes. Yes, Chairman Hamilton, Mr. Zarmi. Been a long day. Yes. So the soil categories. We'll just go with that word. The soil categories that are in both of the two tests they have different titles, different descriptions, and those types of things. However, what they're looking for, you can translate from one to the other. So you can look at a soil investigation for a septic tank and see that this is the category that has high clays, and then translate that into what we would look for a building site, and say, okay, if it has high clays, we know we need to address this, and we need to have a soils investigation done to be able to ensure that those expansive soils aren't going to affect the structure.
Yeah, basically the concern is the expansive soil and the clay in certain areas and all that. And then the third option was that, if there is a application for a area or home that or project that in the neighboring properties, there are existing homes that they are not showing any signs of any problems, or the history of it doesn't show, that would be also a mean for accepting it, right?
I believe so, yes.
So that was something that, we also discussed on that one too. And so that's what it seems like, what we have here. And of course, one last is, if it's middle of nowhere, there is no history about it, and, somebody wants to build something, they need to provide the geotech. I guess what, Board Member McKee was concerned about is when people are buying homes or they're building homes, that geotech is not going to do them much good if they already have other means to be able to do that. On the septic, yes, it's a requirement. They need to have it to be able to get a septic tank in. But for geotech, yeah, they get it. And I mentioned in the last meeting that if you, I'm sure you're familiar with it, they give you like a nice booklet, thick, and it's only 1 or 2 pages is related to that project. And in most cases, it's an overkill and things like that. So the end user is not going to really benefit much from that as long as other means are available. So that's why I want to make sure that, we are on the same page. It seems like, this particular paragraph, we really tried to do a good job of condensing it. And again, since we are going to be at the building official shall be permitted to waive requirements. So any application that comes to Kingman, Bullhead, or Havasu and all that, what would be that they have to basically send it to the building official? Or is it that you have like some sort of a streamlining that is going to support that?
Chairman Hamilton, Mr. Azarmi, this basically, the entire code is written directed towards the building official and his roles and requirements. So basically, the chief building official, Smaby, he is governed by the building code, and then he sets his policies within his division on how to do those things. So while it says, the building official can waive these things, then it would be a matter of building officials maybe setting that policy within the division, which he has already been working on that practice, been working in that direction. And really, a lot of these are the practices that we've been doing already. This just codifies it and makes it clear for everybody involved.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Welch, one of the factors that happened in the past is that, they were not, the offices, they were not accepting any application unless the geotech was supported or provided. So basically what I'm hearing from you is that, they're going to accept the application, and definitely then, Gilbert would be able to basically say yes or no in the process of the application. Because as you know, we had that happen to us, and there were few people that they were in that direction, and they were not accepting any application.
And if I may, just on that was an error on our part, and that was an error in the division in requiring that for all of these. So once we identified that, we addressed it, and as I mentioned, we've been practicing this route since that point, and really what this is doing is just codifying those practices.
May I ask why we don't have like a expanded version of this, the language that, we just discussed, for example, for average person, obviously everybody on the board, they know about it.
Yeah.
You know about it, Gilbert knows about it, but somebody who is not familiar is looking at this. I don't believe that it's going to give that message to him that yes, you can provide, the perk test, or you can do your, the neighboring properties and things like that. Is there any way that we can have some sort of a clarification, or is it there is a reason for that?
Chairman Hamilton, Mr. Azarmi, I believe the intent, and to address the anybody being able to read the code, I think we've seen we have a hard time sometimes understanding the code. So, but definitely, I think what we tried to do with this one is, I believe we address it. And if there's any clarification or any additions that the board would like to see, we'd be happy to add it. But I think what we tried to do was, one, find the right place within the code to address the conversation that we've been having, and then two, to implement it in a way that we addressed everything that has been brought up. And I believe, when it talks about geotechnical investigations and being able to get subsequent investigations, we felt that basically when an updated geotechnical report is completed, the recommendations of the new report will be accepted in lieu of the previous report. So I think that one addresses that first concern of, the boilerplate over X everything 3 feet. next, it talks, the code has it written in there that basically the exception for requiring an investigation would be that if there's sufficient data being provided, and we tried to clarify in our statement, the intent was to clarify what that additional satisfactory data would be, and that was including geotechnical reports on adjacent areas, as well as septic soil investigative reports on the subject property. So I believe we've captured the intent of the discussion, and I think, I think that's why we run into a code every 3 years, is because they're all constantly finding, new confusions that they try and clarify and those types of things. But yeah, if the board would like us to make any changes or any additions to this, we'd be happy to work with
Mr.
the
Chairman, I just want to make sure that you're confident about, this language and the training that your staff are going to have to understand those stipulations. And because, I personally, it doesn't bother me because my subdivision is already have a geotech, and I'm exempt from all this. But I'm thinking because of the practices that we saw out there, we just want to make sure that, we're not going to be going back to the same situation. And again, number one was the application, acceptance of the application. Number two was to understand this, language that we just talked about it would be implemented, and it's not going to be, just, misinformation gets out there. So as long as you are confident about it, I have no problem with that.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Azarmi, I believe, and like I said, we've been practicing this since we've had that issue, and I think, I don't know that we've had any reoccurrences of that since that time, and definitely we've been training staff to ensure that doesn't happen again.
Thank you.
Chairman? Just a quick, something that Mr. Azarmi brought up a good point that I don't see in here, and again, maybe I have the wrong glasses or contacts in, was that if there's an existing soils report for a subdivision next door, and we're same soils type, same basic thing, that you will not require any additional, we can go by that recommendation, correct?
Chairman Hamilton, Mr. McKee, that is correct. So that would be in the exception portion, where it defines the satisfactory data may include geotechnical reports on adjacent areas.
Correct. Additionally to that, I think Mr. Azarmi raised a good point, that if we're building, let's say, a home, a new residence, in an area that is not a subdivision, that does not have a soils report on it, that we're building next to a subdivision that does not have a soils report on it, but that subdivision itself has had zero problems with any expansive soil issues, that is good enough information to allow the exemption for the new permit coming in. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes. And you can hit your microphone.
Yes,
Chairman
please, on your mic.
Hamilton, Board Member McKee. Yes, that would be some of the satisfactory data that we would accept to make that decision. I mean, we look at surrounding areas. We also look at the website soils classifications that there are different data that we would look at, and that would make our determination. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I may clarify, because again, it is hidden in this language of one sentence. So it is my understanding, like what we had before, I'm going to give you an example of Desert Lakes Estates. At the beginning, they were asking geotech on those lots. But again, there were so many homes built in that area that, did not need it. But it's my understanding is that, within a reasonable distance from the location that the subdivision is and the surrounding area, if there are other homes that are built and there is no problem, that's the time that, that would be acceptable. But if there is some evidence, like for example, in our area, El Rio subdivision, pretty much everybody knows that there are some, evidence of clay. Or, we have the, Jamie Street or Sunset Ranchos and all that they had some failure there. I believe that's what I'm understanding, that, that would be within a reasonable distance from the existing homes that they never had any problems. That would be acceptable based on the understanding of this new ordinance that you have.
That's correct.
Is that correct? That's what we're saying, that, again.
Board Member McKee? Anything else? Any further discussion from the board on that?
If there is nothing, I'll make a motion to approve per staff recommendation.
Is there a second for the approval?
I will second that approval.
All those in favor of approving this geotech report revision signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh, that was a delay.
Sorry for the delay.
That was a delay, yes.
Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is item number 2. I believe Gilbert has something to say on this. I don't believe there's any action to be taken on this. Is that correct? Gilbert?
Chairman Hamilton, board members. Yeah, item 2 is a discussion of possible action regarding special inspection for Simpson Strongwall product. Again, the board brought this at the last meeting to have a discussion on it. Doing some background on, investigating some of the background of Simpson Strongwall product. I've worked with them for years. They are a product that basically allows wing walls of garages and pier wall to be reduced based on their product. Their products have always been tested. They necessarily haven't been engineered, but they were third-party tested to be compatible with the code and be recognized by the code as an alternate method or means or methods of that construction. Looking at the board's request, there was a question that the Simpson Strongwall was requiring third-party special inspection for the foundation bolt. And in looking at their product, most products that are an alternate method to the code usually or they will be third-party tested. So they have a testing credential on them. There's numerous companies that do it. ICC has an ESI report or ES report. UL Listings have their report. IMPO has a plumbing report. So basically the product is tested in a third party and is basically put out a report of how to install their product, how to use their product, and what requirements are needed to install their product. Looking at their ESI report for Simpson Strongwalls, there is a section in their report that basically says if jurisdictions governed by the IRC, special inspections are not required except where an engineer design according with IRC section 301 of the IRC is used. Where engineering design is used, special inspection in accordance with section 4 will be required. So when we looked at this, in most cases, Simpson Strongwalls were being used as a prescriptive method in the code. When you go outside that prescriptive method of the IRC, then it gets into an engineer design. An example would be tall wall framing above 10 feet of a plate height, either wood or steel. In a lot of these applications for Simpson Strongwall, they were wanting to use those for 16-foot tall RV garages, stuff like that. Again, once you exceed that 10-foot plate height in the code, it clicked into an engineer design, and then the Simpson company or whoever has the report basically is saying that they want someone to special inspect the anchor bolt for that wall outside the prescriptive design. So we're seeing this quite a lot with different products. I'll say like Hilti expansion anchors are requiring special inspection. We're seeing those now in steel buildings, cold form steel buildings, not the red iron moment frame buildings. But when the whole perimeter is done with expansion anchors, they're requiring a third-party person to watch the holes be blown out, the drill to be the proper size, the anchor bolt to be put in the current way. So we're seeing this a lot of in different products. I think it's based on their liability, basically. But I agree with Doug. When the Simpson Strongwall first came out, it was a tested design, and if you installed it for their they supplied everything. They supplied the wall, the anchor bolts, a plate to set the anchor bolt, and if you installed it all for that design, you didn't have to have engineering and you didn't have to have special inspection. But again, some of these products are coming back now that either they're having problems with them being prescriptive like that under their product warranty, or something that they're requiring a third party to take a look at that. That's the research I've done on it. Actually, unfortunately, the building department we can't deviate from the report. It's a third-party testing report that has to be installed that way. If you have any questions, Great answer.
Chairman, Mr. Smedley? Yeah, I had an opportunity to speak with several people at Simpson. One of the, and I have several names that I can enter to the record if needed, engineers, regional managers, and territorial manager regarding their Simpson strongwall. They directed me towards section 4.3.1, which I believe we discussed last time. That I said if special inspection is required, the inspector is responsible for verifying the hold down, the anchor type, size, placement, etc. The engineer that I spoke with said the key word in that statement is if. And if the project is requiring a special inspection anyhow, that it will be that inspector, that field engineer's job to consider this in his report. But Simpson themselves do not require a third-party inspection with their strong wall unless you've used all thread, different type of bolt. But if you use their bolt and their template and their embedment and spacing is to their satisfactory, which the engineer described to me as all the field inspector has to do, the building inspector has to do is look at the top of that bolt, and if you see the equal to and the Simpson stamp on that bolt, and it says 1 inch, and the engineer is required a 1 inch 24 bolt, that nut at the bottom of that anchor bolt is set at its embedment depth, and it's foolproof. That you can't adjust that nut at all because it's been pinned in that position. So the embedment depth and the embedment width are set with that template. So as long as the builder uses that template, uses the bolt, and using that strong wall, that there is no third-party inspection required. And again, he redirected me to that 4.3.1 where it said if there's a special inspection required. And then he went on to say that if the county does require a special inspection report, that it's certainly a jurisdictional thing, which I think that we as a board have, some leeway on, and we'd like to take a look and discuss that because it seems redundant to me. And I build several houses. 5 of my 6 models have an RV garage, and I use the SSW 16. It's a great product, and I've been using them for 30 years. They're foolproof. We've never had a problem with them. And again, we always use the Simpson product, the template, the bolt, and their strong wall. In which I said I can provide you with the name and number of the engineers that I spoke with, the territorial representative. If you'd like to speak with them and ask them questions yourself, I'll provide that information. But they were very helpful in directing me and kind of confirming with me my thoughts on it.
Chairman Hamilton, Member Key, we did talk to Simpson also, and I talked to an engineer who described it completely different. So what I'd like to do or present to the board is what we do with ICC is put a formal interpretation to that company and get a formal response back from them. We do this to ICC a lot on the interpretation of the code. And so since it's their product, we'll get a letter back from the engineer specifically stating what their requirements are, and it'll be stamped by them. So if I can entertain them and we can continue this, we can go that route.
Chairman Hamilton, if I might weigh in just a little bit. I really appreciate Mr. McKee's reaching out to them and getting that information. Please share that information with us. We'll reach out to them and see what we can do to get a statement like Chief Building Official maybe mentioned. I think what got us, because we've looked at their specifications as well, and I agree with you that the if is a big if, and that's, if we can go that route and not require it, because like you said, as Gilbert mentioned, and as you mentioned, these are tested products. They test them, they design them so that they don't fail because they don't want them to fail, and we don't want them to fail. What has caused the issue with us is actually 4.3.6. And this is really what raised the concern and where we've gotten into this issue. And if we can get them to clarify this 4.3.6, I believe we can move forward. And what 4.3.6 has is in jurisdictions governed by the IRC, which we are, special inspections are not required except where, and this is what gets us, except where an engineered design according to section R301.1.3 of the IRC is used. Where an engineered design is used, special inspections in accordance with section 4.3 of this report must be provided. So, in Gilbert, you're the expert. I'll make sure, I'll have you make sure I'm not talking out of school here, but section 301.1.3 discusses the prescriptive method and being able to design these without engineering. And that limits you to that 10-foot plate height. So once we go above that 10-foot plate height, we're no longer in that prescriptive zone, and it now becomes engineering. And then that's what's triggering where in 3.6, it says where an engineered design is used, special inspections in accordance with this are required. So that's really what's caused this issue for us. But if you've got a contact there that we can reach out to and get some sort of communication from them that addresses that, I think we'd all appreciate that, because we don't take any pleasure in getting requiring special inspections as much as you don't take any pleasure in having to have them done. So yeah, if we could get rid of that, we'd be more than happy to do so.
Sure. Mr. Chairman? Thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Walsh. I think in a situation, I see great value in special inspections. I mean, and Mr. Smavely brought up some great points, and when we're putting down some, hold downs that get basically one shot are very important to the integrity of the building. I can see the necessity of somebody dropping a tape, having it blown out, making sure we're using the correct PSI and the correct adhesives and all that stuff. That makes great sense. And something like this, where we have basically two opportunities to look at what's happening. One, when it's in its template form, and you see the embedment, you see that the correct equipment's being used, all three, the hold downs, the template, and the strong wall. The embedment's perfect, the width is perfect. It just seems redundant. The second opportunity the inspector has to look at is to make sure that they're in place in the right position when the strong wall during the framing inspection. Make sure that they're not bent over, hadn't been jacked and moved or misplaced, or those bolts replaced with some all thread, which I mean, I certainly hope nobody would do, but it gives the inspector a second opportunity to look at that. So, I mean, I believe, and I might have to refer to council on this, that I believe the board has some leeway on what we want to adopt and don't want to adopt from the IRC, correct? I mean, am I, Mr. Chairman?
Correct. From what I understand, yes.
I mean, on something like this, I would
We make recommendations to the
Make a
board of
recommendation,
supervisors.
yes.
Is how that go.
better stated.
Chairman Hamel, I think the difference with the IRC and what we're looking at here, these are manufacturer specs. So these are not our adopted documents with the IRC and that. This is the documents from Simpson Strongwall. So these are their specifications. So if we alter this, then anything with that, we would be assuming any of that liability from
Okay.
it.
Mr. Chairman, it was from my understanding from my discussions from the people at Simpson I talked to that these are ICC recommendations and not Simpson themselves are issuing these recommendations. So as far as Simpson was concerned, they said that they would defer to the jurisdiction. Was a verbiage that I used that I was told from their engineer and their two field representatives that I spoke to. That they're not a Simpson recommendation themselves. It was a third-party recommendation. That was the understanding that I received from them.
So, okay, yeah, no, you're absolutely, yeah, Tony's on it. You're absolutely correct. It's ES, it's the ICC evaluation service. So on the front page, you've got exactly that. So it's their third-party evaluation report and the recommendations. But I think it still falls back to if we could get a letter from Simpson stating that for these 12-foot walls, or because I want to say the strong walls, is it 13 foot that they go up to?
I use the SSW 17, which is the 17-foot wall.
Okay, so if we could get something from them basically stating that it doesn't need that special inspection, we would have no issue in not requiring it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
We'll if I may, we'll get with you, Mr. McKee, after the meeting and get that contact information and start doing some
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr.
homework.
Wall.
So at this point on agenda item 2, there's no action on this yet. but we're going to get more information and probably bring it back at our next meeting, discuss it again as well. Moving on to item number 3 and 4, it was informed that item 3 and item 4 have been removed from the agenda because we have further action that still needs, or further investigation that needs to be on these items. Is that correct?
Chairman Hamilton, that's correct. I do believe we need to address these separately since they're a specific agenda item. So I make the motion or recommendation to the board that we continue item 3 until our next meeting, October 11th, 2023.
Correct, and we will have to vote on, because they are an agenda, vote on these one at a time to be tabled until the next meeting.
I'll make a motion to table that till the next.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that agenda item.
Mr. Chair,
I do
I apologize for interrupting. Since these were pulled from the agenda, they do not need to be voted on.
They do not.
No.
To my understanding, if they were on the agenda, we did. You're the lawyer.
We didn't pull them? Oh, I thought we pulled them. Oh, I apologize. I thought we pulled them before the agenda went out.
So are we going to vote on these?
You're the chair, you're the ultimate decision.
We have a motion and a second for agenda item number 3, the discussion and possible action regarding amendments to the dangerous building abatement program. All those in favor of tabling this until the next meeting signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Any opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 4. Again,
Same thing.
we have this same issue on agenda item number. Did somebody motion that?
Yeah. I'll make a motion.
Board Member Walker moved that we table this until the next meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we table agenda item number 4, the discussion and possible action regarding amendments to the appeal process. Is there any no discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 5, the next meeting tentatively scheduled for 10/11/2023. Is this available for everybody, or is there a conflict on this? Hopefully it's not at the same day that county planning and zoning meets.
As long as they don't have any solar item, we're safe. We're fine.
Board Member Walker?
I have a conflict that day, but I can probably work around it.
Board Member McGee?
I have no conflict with that date.
Vice Chair Profit?
No conflict.
Board Member
Winter's
Muir?
good.
Good? I believe I'll be good as well. So at this time, the next meeting for the Mojave County Advisory Code Board is set for 10/11/2023. Any further discussion? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Do we want to do that, or do you want to prolong this for another half an hour so the
I
PNC?
do not.
I'll make a motion to
This morning. So,
I'll second that motion.
all those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.